Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in our Millennial Mom segment brought to you by OGPay.com, we're chatting about why your blood work says you're normal, but you still feel like something is wrong. Today, we're featuring Jenny Branco, a registered nurse turned integrative health practitioner and founder of Jenny Branco Wellness. She's a hormone specialist who helps women rebalance their hormones and gut health naturally. It's her absolute passion to empower fellow women to dig deeper into why common symptoms such as extreme fatigue, mood swings, digestive issues, and sluggish metabolism happen in the first place. Through her own battle of frustrating mystery symptoms and labs coming back normal, and countless doctors telling her she was fine, Jenny found functional medicine and she was able to rebalance her body. Now, conventional medicine approaches illness as a name it, blame it, and tame it game. But these labels or diagnoses are just names we associate with a collection of symptoms. They have nothing to do with why you have those symptoms, nor identify the root causes of the disease. Conversely, just because your standard lab panel comes back normal doesn't always mean you're experiencing optimum health. Now, we're going to discuss functional medicine and how it seeks to get to the root cause of health issues. We will dive into the world of unconventional and advanced lab testing that Jenny uses to identify dysfunction in the body and optimize health. Right now, in our Millennial Mom segment, we're chatting about a very common complaint. My blood work says I'm normal, but I still feel like something is wrong. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. All right. I love everything you talk about. Let's jump right in. So, my blood work says I'm normal, but I feel like something is wrong. Why do medical lab values and functional lab values drastically differ? We really need clarity here, Jenny, in order to help more people learn how to get well and stay well naturally. Talk to me.
So, traditional medicine, those lab values that you get when your doctor comes into the office and says, everything looks good, you are amazing, you're in all the great health, and you're sitting there like, how can this be? I don't feel well. Those numbers are based on a national average, based on your area of Americans. Now, most Americans, about half, have a chronic illness, are on about 4 pharmaceuticals. Do you really want your health to be considered normal within that population is what you need to think about. It's based on an average. And now traditional medical system, we need that, right? It's life-saving. If I break my leg, if I get diagnosed with cancer, if I have a burn, it's amazing in that sense for an acute problem. But I think there's a real gap that needs to be bridged between emergent, I have a disease, versus I'm not feeling so great. What can I do to prevent that issue? So, to answer your question, traditional medical labs are based on this average. They're going to tell you if you have a disease or not. If you don't, you're sent on your way. We'll see you next time, maybe until it gets bad enough for us to say, hey, there's a problem. Let's give you a med. And then functional medicine labs, we're looking at your optimal health, a very narrower range. So we want to look at your numbers are creeping up. Maybe you're not feeling so good before you get to that point of disease, and we want to prevent it from getting worse.
It's interesting. So I guess what you're saying is, it's important to understand that lab results are based on, I guess, reference intervals that follow a bell curve, so to speak, distribution, and numbers considered normal fall within the middle, say 95% of that curve. And anything on the outer ends of the spectrum are considered abnormal, right? While anything within the middle of that bell curve is considered normal. So yeah, to your point, these numbers are based on a large sampling of the population, and it doesn't necessarily take into account the age or health status of the individuals who make up that sample population. So your normal lab results simply mean that you fall within the average of a very unhealthy population. I mean, you just hit home with that. That's exactly true. And you don't want to be that norm. You want to be optimal, right? So how do we move forward and fix this problem? What steps can we take?
So, with myself, my own story, I had to really look for someone who could tell me why this was happening. That was the answer that I could not find. And being a registered nurse, I think it frustrated me a little bit more because I was like, I got into this profession to help people, and now I can't even figure out how to help myself. I went to my OB, my PCP, and they're very smart, very intelligent people, but they are constricted to this model of medicine. And all of my blood work came back normal, even though I was feeling awful. And so I just went down this rabbit hole, which at the time I was not happy about, but it got me here. And so I had to look, I just kept looking for why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why? Ask that question. Keep asking that question. And I eventually got to the concept of functional medicine, which is really this overarching theme of figuring out what is actually causing your symptom in the first place and taking action to reverse that. So working with a functional medicine practitioner in your area or someone, like myself that does it virtually would be my top recommendation for people.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's 2023. And to your point, your healthcare provider should understand the difference between normal and optimal. I mean, we can determine optimal ranges for just about every lab test, and we shouldn't be satisfied with being normal. I say in a population where, to your point, 42% of the population is obese, 34 million people have diabetes, 48% of adults have heart disease, 133 million people have a chronic disease, and 66% of adults use prescription drugs. I mean, yeah, it's time to wake up. This normal is no longer good. So let's go back. So embrace non-traditional labs and start chasing root causes instead of treating symptoms is what you're saying. So if your labs show something that is abnormal or suboptimal, then your doctor should ask why until he can't ask why anymore, to your point. So I say that we must demand for better testing. So tell me, how does one go about this without breaking the bank? Because there's a lot of people out there that just don't have access and that kind of coverage. And they are the very ones that are being told, go home, you're normal, perhaps. So will insurance companies comply? What steps do you recommend somebody takes here?
So there's two different options to accommodate different needs and different stances. So what I would say is the first thing you need to know is that your doctor may not be trained to look at a lab and read it for optimal levels. That's the first thing. Women are always like, "Well, what do I ask my doctor for?" You can ask them for all the labs that you already get, but if they are just looking at it with one lens, which is that within normal range lens, they were not trained to use optimal values. That is something that is taught in functional medicine, as far as I know, only, not in traditional medicine,
No, you're right.
unless your doctor took extra steps, which is just really not the case right now. They're overburdened with, the acute things going on, right? So you really right from there, like for myself and my clients, sometimes I do a case review, which I will just take your lab work that you got at your doctor's office. We don't even have to run anything special at that point, and I look at it through my optimal lens, using this narrower range. And just from that standard blood work you've had done, I find things on every single client. So
Wow.
having someone that knows how to do that can look at it with optimal ranges. It would be step one. And so you don't have to break the bank. You don't have to have more lab tests run. Those are covered by insurance. So just knowing that that's a tool in your toolbox. The second half of that is that you can look into specialty functional medicine labs. This is what has been a game changer for my clients. And these are now going to dig deeper. They're going to show you things that blood work just doesn't show you. So these are things like urine samples, hair samples, a finger stick. They're going to look inside your gut. What's going on in there? Too much bad bacteria, too much yeast. Is that why you have low mood or bloating after everything you eat? They dig deeper. They show us your mineral status. Do you have heavy metals, inflammation? Just go way beyond what the scope of traditional labs can do.
You're hitting close to home because when I was in my early 20s, I had thyroid disease and I ended up having to get a lot of radiation done. And most doctors, for example, I'd go so far as to say the vast majority of doctors only check TSH when analyzing thyroid function. And, we know better. We know that we need a much more comprehensive picture of the thyroid. At the very minimum, we should also be checking T3, T4, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies, and vitamin D when one's evaluating thyroid function. I know this because I lived with this issue for, almost 15 years now. Now, this is just one example, but we can't get a detailed picture of how the body is functioning if we take a myopic approach to lab work. So I love what you're saying. Now, sure, back to your point, looking at a comprehensive metabolic panel and figuring out that your liver isn't functioning optimally is important. But to your point, figuring out why your liver isn't functioning optimally is really the only way to truly resolve the problem. And sometimes this requires, and you said it in your last answer, checking for heavy metals, molds, self-infections, and really all these other environmental toxins, checking up there, running a stool sample, right? And really checking for root causes and gut problems such as parasites. This often takes a highly skilled and open-minded individual like yourself, because believe me, there are not many out there willing to think outside the box of conventional Western medicine. I can't emphasize this more. How important is gut health and balanced hormones?
Oh, you're speaking to my soul right now. So a lot of times people, on social, they find me and they say, "So what supplement do I take for gut health? What supplement do I take to get my hormones right?" And of course, I don't expect you to know this when you approach me, but my goodness, when your gut is off, everything else follows suit. So if you came to me and you said, "What is one test that I can only have one, which one should I do?" And you said you had hormonal issues, I would actually have you start with a gut test. And that surprises most people because hormones are a downstream issue. Hormone imbalances, other imbalances happen because something stressed out the body. And that's usually starting in the gut. About 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Your neurotransmitters, those feel good chemical messengers of the brain that are responsible for mood and energy and sleep, they're generated in your gut lining. If your gut is off, you can't digest and absorb the nutrients from your food, no matter how healthy it is. So you could be doing quote unquote all of the right things. If you have mold in your gut, if you have too much toxic yeast, bacterial overgrowth in your gut, your metabolism will be off, your thyroid will be off. You cannot properly convert hormones in your gut. So, short answer here is if your gut is off, literally everything else is going to follow suit. So, that is where I would say you need to start looking to get into that optimal state of health.
You said it. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
That was our Millennial Mom segment brought to you by OGPay.com. And that was the awesome Jenny Branco. Definitely head to her website at jennybranco.com, spelled Branco. Pronounced Bronco, but spelled Branco. And you can also check her out on the gram at Jenny Branco Wellness. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OGPay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OGPay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out OGPay.com.